Hi everyone, this is Kim from KILA Create Printables. Welcome to my channel. Today I want to give you a bit of an introduction to journal making and talk about things like basic supplies, what I like to use, maybe give you some tips and ideas, and also talk about the types of printable kits that are available in my Etsy store. I often get asked questions like, is there a tutorial for this journal kit, or what thickness paper should I use, or what's the best glue? So I thought it might be nice to talk about some journaling basics and how I like to do things, keeping in mind that there are so many different ways to make a journal and that everyone's process is different. Okay, so I'll just set these two journals aside because before I get into some basic supplies, the first thing I want to address is paper size. So paper is the most important supply on the list for obvious reasons. So I just want to clarify a couple of things. I'm in Australia, so our standard paper size is A4, which is what I have on the left here. And I believe in the US that the common size is letter, which is what is on the right. So if you can see when I put them together, they're quite different and not proportionate to each other. All of the kits available in my Etsy store are sized to fit on the A4 size. So it means that if you use letter size, then my printables are going to print differently than they will on A4. Especially, so if you print them at 100% on the letter size, you're going to lose some of the design on the edges. So my first tip for those of you using letter size paper is to select the fit to page or a similar setting in your print settings, especially when printing a full journal page. So this will make sure that none of the design gets cut off. So if you take a look at this journal page here, this is printed on letter size and this one is printed on A4. You'll see that the spaces around the edges are different. So that's because I've used fit to page on this A4 sheet. I'm going to talk about these white borders in a minute, but I've used fit to page on this A4 sheet. So the whole design is on that page. And then I've also used fit to page on the letter sheet so that none of the design has been cut off, but you'll see that the top and the bottom borders are bigger because letter and A4 are not the same proportions. Now with the white borders, if you have a printer that can print borderless, you should be able to print right to the edge of the page and have no white space. But because my files are A4, if you print on a letter size page, and use fit to page, even with a borderless printer, you're still going to get white space on the top and the bottom because they're not the same proportion. So my printer isn't borderless and I end up with these white borders all the time. And what I do when I make my journals is I just cut those white edges off. So next I wanted to talk about journal making supplies. You really don't need a lot of fancy tools and things to make a journal. Like paper is obvious, but I'll run through that more when I talk about the kits that are available in my store. So other than paper, you need a printer. I have an Epson Ecotank 2811. It has nice big ink tanks that are refillable, so it's quite economic, but you should research and decide what printer is best for you. And if you plan to do a lot of printing, I do recommend looking at a tank printer rather than cartridges because it will possibly be cheaper in the long run. Okay, so the other basics that I always have on hand are a craft knife, a cutting mat, a pair of scissors, a metal ruler, a bone folder, selections of glue, an awl, wax thread, and a bookbinding needle. So all of these I've picked up at either my local craft store or my discount variety store. Then there are other tools that aren't completely necessary but do sometimes make crafting easier, like a scoreboard or a paper trimmer and a corner punch. I have a Creative Memories corner punch and I absolutely love it. I've had this for years, so I highly recommend trying to find one of these if you want to use a corner punch. So after that, you'll also need embellishments like lace and paper flowers, metal findings, anything else that you want to use to decorate your journal. So I've got a selection here that I was just going to show you. I've just grabbed these from my stash because my tip for embellishments for your journal is to shop at your local thrift store. I've got all of these supplies from my local thrift store, and as you can see, the prices on them are really quite cheap and you can pick up some really lovely things. I've also had a lot of questions about where I got my ruler. My husband actually made me this ruler using a cheap metal ruler from the hardware store, and he's used a grinder to cut away the edge. But I think that you can buy similar tearing rulers from any good craft store. I also often get asked about glue. So my favorite glue is the Crafter's Choice Tacky glue, which I get from Spotlight here in Australia. I also use glue sticks a lot, sometimes because water-based glues like the Tacky craft glue can wrinkle your paper if you're not careful. But I'm not brand loyal with the glue stick. I just try and find whatever's cheapest as long as it's acid-free. So keep in mind though that these are just what I like to use, and you might have something different that works for you. Now, I mentioned before that I often get asked if there is a tutorial for a particular journal kit, and I do have some tutorials available, but not for every kit. I currently have over 220 listings in my Etsy store, and it's growing every week. The categories I have are pretty self-explanatory, and you'll find lots of tutorials on my channel for things like the folios and the complete DIY kits, but the biggest sections are my journal kits. So I just wanted to run through those with you and the differences between them. So I have 4 types of kits available: my regular journal kits and the add-on kits that go with those, plus I have a few larger journal kits and a range of light journal kits. All of these kits come with journal pages, decorative papers, envelopes and pockets, and ephemera. So the number of pages included in those categories just depends on what type of kit it is. So my regular journal kits come with 10 to 12 journal pages, 6 decorative papers, 6 pages of ephemera, and 7 pages of pockets and envelopes. And the pieces are pretty much the same across most of the kits available. They're just in a range of different themes. Then most of the regular kits will have an add-on kit that contains more ephemera, pockets and envelopes and papers. My large journal kits have everything that's in the regular kits, just with extra ephemera and pockets. And instead of having a matching add-on kit, it's just all in that one kit. So the light journal kits are basically a scaled down version of the regular kits. So they have not as many pages, so 5 to 6 journal pages, 4 decorative papers, 3 pages of ephemera, and 5 pages of pockets and envelopes. So they're designed for smaller projects, or you can combine them with other kits if you're making a larger journal. So you might like to have a look at my Pumpkin Witch journal tutorial for an example of how I used one of the light journal kits to make this journal. I also have a dark rose light kit, which you can get for free by signing up to my newsletter. So I'll put the link for that down below. Okay, so I'm going to use this printout of my Haunted Mansion journal kit to run through how I print and prepare everything when I want to make a journal. With the journal pages, I like to print them on 100 GSM digital paper, and I use the J.Burrows brand from Officeworks here in Australia. Once I've printed all 10 pages, I then flip them over and print either the blank journal pages on the back or the decorative papers. The order I do this in just depends on the project I'm making at the time, and you can choose to do whatever you want for your project. You can print the journal pages back to back, you can use the decorative papers as journal pages, or you can print those back to back, or you can leave the backs blank if you like, if you plan to glue your pages together to make a no-sew journal. There's no right or wrong way to do this, only the way that works for you. Okay, so with the papers, I also like to print these on 100 GSM, especially if I'm using them as journal pages. If I want to use them on the cover of my journal, I might use 120 GSM for a little bit of extra thickness. The pockets and envelopes, I also print these on 100 GSM so that they're the same as my journal pages. And lastly, with the ephemera, I use 200 GSM so they're nice and sturdy. So this is a little bit thicker. Ideally, I'd probably like to use 250 GSM, but it's not as easy to get. But I suggest that you experiment with paper to find what you like and what works for you and your project. So if you're looking for ideas on how I've used my regular journal kits, you might like to watch the Gothic Fairy Tale playlist that's on my channel. Please do pop over to my channel and have a look around, because I have a range of videos with lots of other journal making ideas as well. So thank you so much for watching this video. If you have any questions, please pop them in the comments and I'll do my best to answer them. Make sure you check the description below for links to my Etsy store, and you might like to come and join my Facebook group where we have lots of fun with monthly challenges and I give away a stack of freebies.